I don't know if what I've got to talk about today is really appropriate Chair's Corner material, but I was looking at my email this morning and I saw all these messages that I'm behind on answering, and I thought, well, maybe I could at least combine some of the, just the messages that I need to get out, the replies I owe to a bunch of people in the party um, in one fell swoop like this. But we'll see. Um, so what the reason I've been a little bit distracted and a little bit unavailable, a little more so than usual for the last week or so is my a bunch of my daughter had a baby December 26th. It's my first grandchild, and they're visiting. My daughter and her husband and baby are visiting us right now. And of course, last weekend, we were so kind of frantic to getting everything ready for their visit, but they're here now. I got to hold my grandchild last night for the very first time. Oh, people are telling me this would be a sweet experience, and it sure is. But I know there is a lot of important stuff going on with Tillamook County Democratic Party. And I got to tell you, I am so grateful for Mary McGinnis for stepping up. I'm reading through all these emails that I've neglected to answer or have not gotten around to answer. And she's just been in there handling stuff. And Mary, thank you for all of that. It's sure been a help to have you just in there handling a lot of stuff that's been coming up here lately. So I want to just kind of go over some of the stuff that I know is on the horizon and a little bit maybe give you my take on kind of where I would like to see us heading and what our priorities, what I'd like to see our priorities. But a lot of these things, I want to be as hands-off as possible. And by that I don't mean uninvolved or disinterested, but I want to mostly be working as much as I can, on a sort of facilitation level, of course, and helping to make sure that the organization is working well, that our people are involved and well used, well engaged, but not directing the show as such, because that's really the role of the party. The PCPs are supposed to be in charge of this whole thing, right? The PCPs, the elected representatives and also the appointed representatives of registered Democrats in Tillamook County, they're supposed to be running this show. And I kind of see the job of the officers and myself as being to help make sure that happens as much as possible. But really what I'm all about is strengthening the party, strengthening our party organization. I feel like that happens best in small groups. When I'm communicating with people in smaller groups, and I'm involved in more small group settings, things are happening more as it feels like they should be. So I tell you, a big part of the way that I work is by in these 3-person chairs meetings. Mary McGinnis and Betsy McMahon and we meet every week. I want to recommend to you a recording of part of our last chairs meeting that has to do with our efforts to find a fundraising chair. We'd like to have someone dedicated to leading our fundraising efforts. And I've kind of had in my targets a couple of people to do that, and they both said no at this point. I think we came real close on this last one, but I don't fault that person for saying no at all. I know it's kind of a big ask, but we, Mary and Betsy and I recorded our conversation about the fundraising chair role. We just kind of talk through what our expectations would be, what we figured that position would be like, what the demands and expectations would be. It's about a 15-minute conversation. I'll make sure I might put a link to that in the comments on this recording, or somehow I'll make sure that that's available to you if you're interested in that. But the reason I mention that is that that's an example of the way that I try to work. So I like to stay in touch with the vice chairs very regularly and talk a lot. Yeah, actually, Mary and I talk almost every day, and have, from the time, when I first became second vice chair, we began to kind of get in that habit of, establishing a very close working relationship. So, anytime you see an email from Mary, or, you're dealing with Mary in some committee meeting on, and same goes for Betsy, right? Betsy's newer, but she's getting into the same working groove with me and Mary. You can just assume that that's much like talking to me, right? And better in a lot of ways, right? Because Mary's kind of more in touch with a lot of stuff, but we talk so regularly that she, our vice chairs here in Tillamook County Democratic Party are fully empowered and authorized to act, in the same way that a chair would. At least, I don't know if that actually is 100% consistent with the bylaws, but that's the way we work, right? And that helps to make me more effective, to be able to work very closely with the vice chairs and have them be the people who are mostly dealing with our committees and dealing with just all of our good volunteers and rank and file PCPs. And it just kind of helps me to kind of cope with all the things that are happening now. We are going to have, in fact, we already have in 2022 a very busy year. Things are shaping up. This is going to be a fast moving train here, and it's going to be hard to hang on. So I'm going to need all the help that I can get. I've got two great vice chairs who will sure make that easier. But I would encourage all of you as much as possible to, get involved with a committee. That's kind of the way that we work here, if we can. And, I know that sometimes it's intimidating to make the commitment. It feels like a big commitment to get involved with the committee, because it's like this ongoing thing, which, in some ways it is, although we're understanding of people whose ability to work with a committee is kind of fluctuates depending on what they're doing in other parts of their lives over the course of a year or however long it is. But the committees are where the action is. If you have the expectation that you're going to come to me, as the chair of the party, and really make something happen, well, that's probably reflects a misunderstanding of how an organization like this works. Because, you might get me to be interested in what you're working on, but really I'm not so interested in the fruits of our work. And that's, I'm interested that the work that I am interested in doing is a sort of a building and strengthening process. I am interested in building an involvement machine, and that involvement machine is going to, I believe, be a very useful thing in changing political outcomes in our county, and probably more than just that. But once we get to the point where we've done everything that we can to get people involved, get them motivated and engaged, and they're out there doing their work, then what happens in the election is that's, I guess, fate is. I mean, I know there's a lot more to it than that. But you know, I kind of figure it's out of my hands at a certain point. So I also kind of want to talk about the good work that all of our committees are doing, but maybe I'll put that off to another one of these Chairs Corner things. This one's gone on long enough, just kind of explaining the general way that I work. But yeah, that's the main thing that I wanted to accomplish here. Just if you're wondering why I haven't answered your emails or your text messages or Slack messages more and more these days, that's the reason. And I'll be more engaged in the coming week, but I'm, as much as possible, going to be working to get other people engaged, and I'm going to be more leading from behind, as they say.